More than 3 months since Nigeria's presidential election, issues around the polls are still hanging around. The results of the presidential election announced by INEC has since been questioned by opposition parties, mainly the People's Democratic Party and the Labour Party and their candidates Peter Obi and Atiku Abubakar. Although the named winner of the election, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, has since been inaugurated and it's almost 2 months into his administration, controversies still surround his emergence as president. In the latest issue making the rounds, the president was quoted to have won the Presidential Tribunal petition tribunal against nullifying his election based on the interpretation of the 25% Federal Capital Territory votes. The president's most recent statement has thrown the nation's legal and non-legal voices into a debate about its tone, what it serves to achieve, and what the Constitution actually says about this seemingly sacred 25% in the Federal Capital Territory. Joining me tonight to unpack this issue on the show, I have Libero Soshoma and Jide Ologun, both legal practitioners joining from Lagos. A warm welcome to you, gentlemen, and thanks for joining me on the program.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
Now, I'd like to start with Barrister Ologun. Given President Tinubu's warning about the potential chaos, what are the possible scenarios that could unfold if he were to be removed as president based on the failure of the 25% in the Federal Capital Territory? What do you make of a statement saying, it could lead to chaos and anarchy?
To start with, I want to add that the tribunal has not come to a conclusion of this matter. So my opinion will basically be based on precedent that we have. And this issue of 25% in the Federal Capital Territory can be found in Section 134, subsections 1 and 2 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended. And what it says is that a candidate for an election to the office of the president shall be deemed to have been duly elected, where there have been only 2 candidates for the election. He has the majority of votes cast at the election, and he has not less than 1/4 of the votes cast at the election in each of at least 2/3 of all the states in the Federation and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. So the big question now is that, is Abuja a senior state to all other states? Or is Abuja reckoned as perhaps the 37th state in this situation? And that is where we are right now. And when you look at the case of Buhari versus Obasanjo in 2005, this issue also came up, and the decision of the Supreme Court moved in the direction of the fact that, let's even assume that Abuja has a special status. Are we now saying that Abuja supersedes the other 24 states as we have? So my position, while not preempting the verdict of the tribunal, is that it's a very sensitive issue in our electioneering processes in Nigeria that the National Assembly should consider after going through all these petitions that we have right now, because Section 4 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended says that the National Assembly shall make laws for the peace, orderliness, and good governance of Nigeria. So if we have threats of a decision premised on a provision of the Constitution likely to throw the nation into anarchy, we need to look at it. And that is why I took the pain to present all sides to it. And when you talk about equity.
Hello. Okay, I'd like to bring in our second distinguished guest into the conversation at this point, Libero Soshoma. Barrister Soshoma, a warm welcome to you. Now, how does the requirement for presidential candidate to score 25% of votes in the FCT and 2/3 of Nigerian states contribute to the overall legitimacy and representativeness of the election results?
Yeah, first and foremost, let's quickly make some things very clear so that for the benefit of our viewers, so we don't, conflate these issues. This statement was not made by Tinubu because I've read a lot of people also have the courts asked them not to. After the argument, after the presentation of witnesses by both parties, there's what we call the final written address of the lawyers. So to Tinubu, Olanipeku SAN, that was part of his address. Those contention were part of his address in his final address. And I want to please permit me to read some portion of that address. So because from your opening statement, it looks as if
it was President Tinubu's statement.
Yes, it was President Tinubu's statement.
Please go ahead.
Because also a lot of people also have said that, and it makes it look at contention of the petitioner is that the second respondent did not score 25% or 1/4 of the vote recorded in the FCT. While the petitioner have also alluded to the respondent's non-qualification without any fact known to law. He now went further to cite section 1342 of the Constitution, which my learned friend Jide Ologu read copiously. And then he went further to say, while we have premised this issue on the combined reading of section 134 and 299 of the Constitution and section 616 of the Electoral Act in the course of our argument, it is apt to submit right from the get-go that election is about votes and voters. When at all, as all votes are equal, adding that there is no superiority between the voters from votes secured in Kano, Lagos, which are the most populous states, and Bayelsa, Ebonyi, Ekiti, which are the least populous states. And then the place where he made that particular statement, and well, if you go to the bottom of that written address, he now went to say, in essence, the reading of the subsection has to be conjunctive and not disjunctive, as the Constitution clearly makes it so. The Constitution is imperative that the Federal Capital Territory is taken as if it is the 37 states under and by virtue of section 299 of the Constitution, which, with much respect, any other interpretation different from this will lead to absurdity, chaos, anarchy, and alteration of the very intention of the legislature. These are final arguments of Tinubu's legal counsel in court, typical of every matter. After witnesses have been taken, lawyers are allowed to submit their final argument in line with the position of the law. And I would say also, with all due respect, that my position consistently had been that the FCT is, for the purpose of the Constitution and for the purpose of section 299 of the Constitution, it's a 37 states of the Federation. And so the votes from the FCT are not premium votes that will now mean that if you do not score, what do you call it, if you 25%. Do not score 25% in the FCT, then you cannot be declared a winner. Assuming without consider, I want to also ask a question. Are we therefore saying that a candidate for election, for example, by virtue of section 134, if you score 100% in all the 36 states of the Federation, you have 2 or more candidates, and one candidate win 100% in 36 states of the Federation and did not win just one vote in FCT, are we saying such a candidate cannot be declared a winner because he did not win 25% of the vote? That is not the intent of the legislature, and any interpretation that will give FCT superior vote will lead to chaos, anarchy, and a distraction from the intent of the Constitution.
Thank you very much, Liberals, for clearing the air on that statement about declaration of nullification of the results on the grounds of 25% of the FCT did not emanate from Mr. President directly. It came from his legal representative, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Wole Olanipeku. Now, back to you, Barrister Ologun. President Tinubu's lawyers argue that even without scoring in Abuja and one other state, he will still have won the election. How does this argument align with the principle of fair representation and equal suffrage?
Is that question for me?
Asked that, can we then say Federal Capital Territory to represent all the other 36 states, and whoever wins to be declared winner of the presidential election? And that is why my point of emphasis right now is to ask that the National Assembly should visit this particular impasse. Let me put it that way. It featured in the case of Anarchy and Obasanjo, is featuring again. Please attend to it. And the Constitution is clear. We need 24 states. Even when you say that Abuja is conjunctive, Abuja is not a royal state that becomes a super brother to all the other states. And that is why I want to say again that the tribunal to also look keenly into the implications of the position of the law before coming to a conclusion. And I must say, I have my trust in the petition tribunal that is handling the matter. And if you look at Section 131 of the Evidence Act in Nigeria, it is he who alleges that must prove. So if you have come to the court to make some claims, you establish it. And our senior silk, Olanipeku, also declared in his final written address that the main issues were not even addressed, talking about electoral offenses in this matter. And what he is saying, which is legitimate, is that the client he represents, has presented his own case. And of course, the role of an advocate is to win the case for his client. And all these facts and issues of law have been presented before the tribunal. But this issue of the status of Abuja must be dealt with. I don't want us to be discussing this again in 2027. But on the scale of equity, on the scale of giving, a robust interpretation to the Constitution, the Federal Capital Territory does not have any muscle that makes it superior to all the other states in the country that are considered where the winner should have the 25%, talking about 24 other states. And I expect that the tribunal will move in this direction. And let me also underscore what my learned colleague ruled out. These were not the direct statements of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and the lawyers have the legitimacy to represent him. And you must present your points before the court in a way that you persuade the court to go in line with the provisions of the law. And that is where we are right now. So there shouldn't be any unnecessary anxiety in the society. What the lawyers are saying is that you don't take your eyes away from this particular fact, because it's what some have been holding on to. And I have advised those who have been monitoring these proceedings that we just need to calm down and look deeply into the provisions of the law. And let me go back to President again. You recall that there was a time that a gubernatorial candidate, talking about Kogi State, died at a very critical moment.
Prince Abubakar Audu, yes.
And the matter was amended in the Electoral Act amendment subsequently to deal with it. So I am amplifying my position that the National Assembly should please look at the status of Federal Capital Territory in our electioneering processes and amend that provision to give us a clear host and not just be ambiguous. And those are my submissions on these issues for now.
Thank you very much, Barrister Ologun. Now, Boris, I'd like to pick up from where Barrister Ologun left. He did mention that the National Assembly should look at the issue of the FCT and, lay down the laws as that will be governing elections and with regards to FCT going forward. Now, is it not automatic that once a judgment is passed with regards to this presidential election petition tribunal, it automatically becomes precedent, it becomes law, or do we always have to go back to the National Assembly to make it an act of law?
That's why, if you notice, while he was talking, I was shaking my head that you do not need a National Assembly interpretation or amendment because the law is clear and explicit. Sometimes lawyers would want to be very mischievous and create ambiguity where there is none. That is why we say in law that the law is what the court says it is and not the letters with which it is written on the paper. And in this particular law, if you remember, even Olanipeku also quoted copiously the position of the Supreme Court on this matter. And it says, that was in the case of Buhari and Obasanjo in 2005. He said, coincidentally, these sections of the Constitution were considered by the Supreme Court in the celebrated case of Buhari and Obasanjo, reported in 2005, 13 Nigerian Weekly Law Report, Part 941, page 1 to 105. And the Apex Court held thus. This provision appears clear to me. Where a candidate wins the highest number of votes in at least 2/3 of the 36 states in the Federation and the FCT, he is deemed to be elected. I do appreciate any ambiguity in the provision. And if there was one, this court is bound to adopt a construction which is just, reasonable, and sensible. See the case of Maxwell on interpretation of Statute 12th edition, Chapter 10. The court went further to say, in my view, it will lead to absurdity and manifest injustice to nullify the election for an entire nation because of the nullification of the election in one state, some local government area, wards, and units. Such a devastating result could hardly have been contemplated by the framers of the Constitution. And the court held, it is my conclusion, therefore, that the cancellation of the election in Ogun State and the other smaller component does not substantially affect the election of the first and second respondent, which is Obasanjo and Atiku there. In this event, the petition failed and same is dismissed with cost. And I assess at 5,000 in favor of each of the respondents. So, if you look at this matter, what lawyers do, you pay a lawyer to argue a matter. And then the lawyers, thank God to electronic media, the lawyers now create ambiguity in the mind of would-be listeners using what you call the court of public opinion to argue the case of their client and give the impression that that is the position of the law. I think that is what has happened in the case of the PDP and the Labour Party, and then now create the impression that, oh yes, there's an ambiguity here. If these lawyers, these same lawyers arguing this case today, were on the other side, were paid from the other side, I can tell you they would have been arguing today that the opposite of what they are arguing. So what you basically see is that lawyers trying to present their case, the case of their client, making it look as if it's a universal fact, whereas it is not. Even if you look at it, the entire gamut of that constitution, there's what we call the spirit and the letters of the law. The letters of the law is different from the spirit of the law. And that's why the question we'll ask is, what is the intendment of the drafters? What is the mischief this law intends to cure? And conclusively, the court had heard that the intendment of the drafters, of that section is to ensure spread, that the president of a country must have at least spread in the entire country so that you don't just get votes from one section. So is there any provision, because such provisions for presidential election are also repeated in pari materia with the governorship election. Is there any such provision in the states, in the governorship requirement for governorship election, where a particular local government, let's take the local government where the headquarters.
Hello, Barrister Oshoma, are you there? I think we are having issues with your connection. But I'd like to bring Barrister Ologun back into the conversation now. This is a very contentious issue, and there's been debates on both sides of the divide.
Why do we now think that such a section is, in the law and the requirement for becoming a president of Nigeria? The answer is definitely no.
Okay, thank you, Barrister Oshoma. And a lot of Nigerians have been wondering that, if a state is so special, it means the presidential candidates will spend all their campaign time in that state trying to get votes, if it will be the determining factor in leading to the emergence. Now, Barrister Ologun, this issue has been so contentious on both sides of the divide, not just politically, even legally. You have lawyers that have taken different positions. When are we expecting a final judgment on this matter from the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal? And I also want you, if you can, to explain in more details how the Nigerian Constitution addresses the requirement for presidential candidates to score 25% of votes in specific regions. In your opinion, do you think there are ambiguities or gaps in the constitutional language that might affect its interpretation? Okay, I think we lost Barrister Ologun. We lost audio connection with him. Now, Boris, I'll take that question again. When are we expecting to get a judgment from the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal? When are they going to decide on this? And can you explain, I know you did touch a little on this when you made your last submission. Can you explain in more detail how the Nigerian Constitution addresses the requirement for presidential candidates to score 25% of votes in specific regions? Are there any ambiguities or gaps in the constitutional language that might affect its interpretation?
First and foremost, let me start from the interpretation. We have 36 states of the Federation, and the requirement is that you must score at least 1/3 in at least 2/3 of the state. And so, with the number of states you have in each region, by the time you begin to calculate 2/3 of the states, which brings you to about 25 or 26 states out of 36, it becomes a practical impossibility for you to garner all your 2/3 from a particular region, because no one region has a total number of 2/3 states. So the impression is that you must have that spread, and which is what that section tries to cure. 134 tries to cure, that irrespective of where you get your 1/3, you must have a spread. So assuming you do not get 1/3 in some states, but you get that 1/3 in FCT, it will still be counted as having scored 1/3 of a state. That is the determinant of that. That's why Section 299 says that for the purpose of this constitution, the FCT shall be regarded as a state. So the presumption is that if you score that 1/3 in FCT, you are also, validly score 1/3 in a state, and not to now make the FCT, a premium state that you must score.
So the FCT would be part of that North Central region, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, the FCT will be part of the North Central region. And so, what it means, like I said, there is no one region. Okay, if you look at all the states, for example, the Northeast has about 7 states. The Southwest has about 6. Apart from the Southeast that has about 5, the North Central has 7 states also. So if you're talking about 2/3 of all the states. There is no way one region can give you 2/3 states. So you must have at least 25 states. I'm talking about 25 states now. So if you take 7 from one region, take another 6 from another region, take 5 from another place. So it's all adding up. Or you take 4 from a particular place, take 2 from another place, provided you get to meet that threshold of 25 or 26 states. Not that you must score the spread must be in particular regions. No. So that not to give unnecessary concentration to certain regions to the disadvantage of that region. That interpretation will be akin to the same interpretation of ensuring that you must get 25% in the FCT. No. And then the judgment also, I think if the judgment should come anytime from now. If not this July, you should probably have a judgment in maybe first week or second week in August. Because what the courts normally do, once the written addresses are adopted, they look through it and then settle down to write their judgment, and then they send out notices to the parties to come for judgment. And I think, so we should keep our fingers crossed, and anytime from now, judgment of that court should be out. And even after the Court of Appeal, you still have the Supreme Court to contend with. So you still have another 60 days after the Court of Appeal to deal with the matter at the Supreme Court. So it's still, even though not too long.
I mean, that's in the case that either one of the parties wants to pursue it to the Supreme Court, because it's not automatic.
Certainly, matters like this, you'll be rest assured that all the parties will certainly want to end at the Supreme Court, considering also the contentious, interpretation that parties are seeking. So they will not want to just leave it at the Court of Appeal. They probably would want to go upstairs to test, the strength of the final arbiter. Because I have not seen any, even governorship election dispute that ends at the Court of Appeal. They always want to get to Supreme Court. Okay. And also, the last one, the Osun election, went as far as the Supreme Court. So I think this one also, being the court of first instance, certainly will end at the Supreme Court. So even if judgment is given, let's say 25 to 30 days from now, you still have another 60 days, bite at the Supreme Court.
Okay. Thank you very much, Barrister Oshome. Now, finally, Barrister Ologun, beyond the immediate case at hand, how might the outcome of this trial influence the interpretation of electoral laws and regulations in future elections? Could it set any significant precedents going forward?
I've emphasized my point. The case of Buhari and Obasanjo has settled this issue. The point I'm making is that the status of Abuja, this federal capital territory, should be defined. And I'm so impressed that my learned colleague ruled out the regions in the country. And I believe there is a restructuring that is trying to ensure that we have 7 states in all these prominent regions, so that we settle this issue. All the states in Nigeria are relevant in making Nigeria a federal republic of Nigeria. And the federal capital territory .
Hello, Barrister Ologun, are you there? I believe my producers are telling me our time is up. I'd like to...
should not in any way become a giant brother of the presidents already. So when you talk, I'm asking that please, and let's settle down and move on. Like my colleagues, the lawyers will want to play with all these issues, but let's stabilize and move on. But I don't have any anxiety concerning what the outcome of this tribunal will be. And I know that the justices will do justice. So
thank you very much, Barristers Jide Ologun and Lebara Soshoma, for taking time out to speak with us in this very important discussion. We do appreciate your contribution and insight. Thank you.
My pleasure.
You're watching Politics HQ on News Central Television. We'll go on a quick break, and when we return, we will be speaking with foremost Niger Delta environmentalist Madam Anko Briggs about the recent crude oil theft discovery in the Niger Delta. Do stay with us. We'll be right back after this.